You still have to have resources. You still have to make investments. And you can never abandon the public schools because they are the engine. The public school is the engine that drives the hopes and dreams and unlocks all the potential that's trapped in the minds of these young people. So the No Child Left Behind is just the latest kind of symbolic vignette that says, hey, this is important to us, and we're going to reorganize our resources and commit more of them, and we're going to put some emphasis on some things that haven't been emphasized before. But that is not an either-or argument. It's not, therefore, we're not going to do these other things we know are essential. And in the process of this whole debate, someone else will come along with some modifications because we will learn as we go. And we'll learn, for example, that even as strongly as I believe in testing, I believe, look, there are different types of intelligence, as Howard Gardner and Harvard University said. There are different skills that kids have. There are different learning styles. And the testing and the measurements ought to reflect that. I mean, I saw that in my own children. I had a son that was, for the first 4 years of his life, we kept saying to the education people, I mean, four years in school, said, this is an auditory learner. If you ask him something, his vocabulary is extraordinary. If you give him something on paper and say, now read me these words and tell me the definitions, he's paralyzed. He thought he was stupid. In the 4th grade, he got a teacher named Karen Gutzweiler in Fairfield Public Schools who said, you know, this kid learns by hearing and by seeing and by doing. He's kinesthetic. And she changed his life. He graduated with honors with a learning disability from Fairfield High School. He went to Miami and in 4 years completed a degree, a 4-year degree and a master's degree in organic chemistry in 4 yees, unheard of. For one of the few that's ever done it, is now working on his PhD in the University of California system. This is a kid that had it not been for a teacher that said, let's adjust our teaching methodology to the way this child learns, would have been lost. And there are millions of kids that are lost because some school board, some superintendent, some principal has said, here's how we teach in this school system, and tough if kids don't learn the way we teach. And what No Child Left Behind is about is trying to change the paradigm where the system puts pressure on all the players inside to say, let's connect our teaching methodology to the way the kid learns and put resources behind that. And then measure to see if we're doing any good for that kid. And then do something about that and bring the parents in as a partner. All instruments are imperfect. We're all imperfect. What No Child Left Behind as it evolves, one of the things I did, for example, here in Ohio, I was the author of our proficiency testing legislation. But what I tried and fought the establishment, fought, and finally in the last piece of legislation I was able to amend before I left the legislature in '97, I required that those questions be made public so we could have a debate on whether the testing methodology was sufficient to really measure what we wanted to measure, and that provide for alternative assessment methodologies to get there. And I think that's an improvement that No Child Left Behind needs to have. First off, I'm part of the baby boomer. There's 75 million of us. In 1950, when I was in school, there were 45% of the parents in the community had kids in public schools. And those kids, it was kind of 60% were Dick, Jane, and Sally type families, Ozzie and Harriet families. There was a community stake in that. Now that's changed. The demographics, the population's older, et cetera. They're less than, I think, 10% of the kids that are the Ozzie and Harriet type families now. Fewer and fewer people have kids in the public system, so there's fewer people that have a stake. And you have an aging population, so you've got more resistance to levies. So there's always going to be the struggle to put more money in more fair ways into education. And New Jersey's been declared unconstitutional, Kentucky, Texas, and Ohio went through that. Now we're technically in line with the Constitution, but you know, ultimately it's a legislative political dynamic that comes down to the ever tough, difficult pressure of taxing and spending, and how do you get the money to pay for what you believe is important? Whether it's property taxes, sales tax, income tax, there aren't very many options. You either spend less or you spend more, and if you spend more, you have to figure out where you're going to get it. And Ohio will continue to do that. You've got two Americas emerging educationally that have been for some time. On one hand, we're doing a lot better. We're educating more people. We're educating them better than we ever did before. A lot of the issue on the test scores, there are more people taking these tests than ever before, whether it's college admission tests and so forth. And so there's a lot of good things that are going on in the public school system and education. But as we've done that and as we've made progress, we've said, well, gee, you've got this gap of minorities in particular that are being left behind, that are not measuring up. Now, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to solve that? This country's stability, both politically, socially, culturally, financially, and our competitiveness in the world depends on our ability to solve that problem. We cannot have the foundation of our economy built on an education and intellectual capital infrastructure that's third world mentality. The two don't fit. So we have to make that a priority at the state, local, and national level. Just as it's true that 25 years ago I had the same types of conversations with people, this will be a conversation that happens 25 years from now, because in an American experience, education is the core of who we are, and that goes all the way back to de Tocqueville's book on democracy in America, where he identified our commitment, our passion to education as being part of the American character. And it will be next year and the year after, and as long as there's this place on this earth called America.